when they start reevaluating January into spring, when the farmers start getting the when they walk over to their farm ag place and feed lot and say, hey, I need to get my 20 tons of ammonia, and they find out it's $1,000 versus $100, they're going to say, no can do, because the bank's not going to loan them the money, because the bank's going to do the math and say, you can't produce enough crop to make it worth your while. So you're going to see a lot of these guys are going to sub out into the, into the farm, what do you call it, the abatement programs, just take their money from the government, and they're not going to produce next year.
Hemp Lucid has been a leader in the hemp industry space for nearly 5 years. And Hemp Lucid has been a supporter of the sun community for over 8 years now. Grand Solar Minimum. Hemp Lucid credits part of their awakening and a motivation for starting their company. The cycles of reset through history based on solar activity. I've gotten to know the founders of Hemp Lucid over the years. They even visited me out here on my farm. I'm impressed with the vision for the company. They have a roadmap and a definite plan moving forward. And as we descend deeper into this Grand Solar Minimum, it's going to be vital for people to start taking holistic products that will help support a healthy body and mind through this transition. Hemp Lucid sells USDA organic products available in tinctures, topicals, edibles, capsules. They also offer pet products for your furry friends. And Hemp Lucid is offering the ADAPT 2030 community up to 60% off products for Black Friday, starting November 14th through the 30th. So visit hemplucid.com. And if you're not sure where to start, try their product finder quiz for helpful recommendations based on your needs and the amount that works for you. hemplucid.com. Good afternoon, everyone. Today with me, Bob Kudla, tradelikeagenius.com. So much has moved forward with pricing in terms of wheat. The crops are now coming in. It's the farmers telling us in the fields what's being lost and not coming anywhere remotely close to what the USDA government forecasts. See, now we're starting to, the oil and the water are separating here. Government rosy forecast to keep markets stabilized versus what the farmers are saying, whoa, we got a huge problem. Durum wheat, for example, is only 50% of what it was last year, and globally, there's not going to be enough to supply. So that would entail shortages or extreme price rises, which we're seeing. Everybody's seeing price rises across the supermarket sphere, if you will. I talked to somebody today at a larger company, U.S. Foods. They're having a lot of difficulty getting meat products in, et cetera. And also, when you see statements like this, Bank of England governor apologizes for reducing the quality of life. Now you're going to have to choose between heating and starving this year. You can't do both. These are the things that are starting to really get that trend and the rollover here. The average person is starting to be aware. So what does that do for our supply chains when the people that are so far behind the ball are going, whoa, we just woke up. What? We got to get ready. Oh, let's empty the bank account and go buy food today. Not by hundreds of thousands or even a couple million, but tens or hundreds of millions of people doing this across North America at the same time, and Europe. And a lot of people are caught off guard. We should have been warned. I've been warning about this. Bob's been talking about it forever. Kind of blue in the face, yapping, price rises, increases, shortages, unavailability, quality of life. You're not in, and it's here now. It's obviously here. So what can we see moving forward? A little bit of timeline. The availability is there right now, but the prices are becoming unaffordable. And we see another pipeline being closed that runs across the Great Lakes. It's just, how much are we being pinched on purpose? Because another closure of a pipeline, and they're talking about releasing part of the strategic oil reserves. Really, we used to export oil a couple years ago. Literally 2 years ago, we were exporting energy resources. Now we need to import, and we're going into shortages, driving gas to $4 or $5 a gallon. Your foods, John Deere's still on strike. A lot of things to plant aren't there. And then the fertilizers are not forthcoming next year. So irregardless, if we had a perfect weather year and everything was running succinctly and everything was just functioning, a cherry on top of perfection, without the fertilizers, we would be getting gargantuan crop reductions anyway. But now add on today's world on top of fertilizer shortages and unavailability, non-delivery, even the base ingredients coming out of China, they turned off the tap instantly on that. There's a huge amount of dovetailing. How many black swans could there be dovetailing at the same time? It's like intertwining of a bunch of tails of ducks together, all black, all swans hitting at the same time. So enjoy your Thanksgiving meals, celebrate with your family that you have abundance and food at your fingertips and on your plates, because next year it's going to get real expensive or unavailable. So Bob's here. Again, we always go around for the month, talk about the changes. This is all since just last month since we talked. All this is really now forward and front on the table. So Bob, I appreciate you joining me. I know it was a long-winded intro there, but yeah, please, you had some ideas before we talked here to fill in some of these gaps on timelines. So I'm all ears.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for having me. I would expect nothing less than a opening monologue of that magnitude. So yeah, so look, we don't have to really be too creative or long-winded here on what we think is going to happen. So everything's tying together here for a potential disaster. And people who know me, I'm not one to get too hyperbolic about things. I feel I'm pretty steady Eddie, but they crossed the Rubicon here, and in their zeal to have the Green New Deal, they created an environment where we're not going to have enough natural gas. That's going to, and I'll start talking America first, and I'll go around the world. Is that people are ignorant, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. They just lack knowledge. The government is pathological because they know if you cut off natural gas, it's not just for heating the home. You can't use solar energy to produce methane or to produce ammonia or to produce anything else that creates fertilizer. And I'll give you the one that's going to hit you guys hardest first. It's not wheat. Wheat doesn't use as much because it's a grass as corn does. Corn's a heavy, heavy feeder. But the heaviest feeder of all is coffee. You cannot produce a coffee crop without fertilizer year in, year out. There's a couple reasons for that. Coffee is grown in the tropics. The tropics are notorious for having poor soil nutrition. So you have to feed the soil every year, or like they did in Brazil for many decades, you slash and burn agriculture, right? That's why they did slash and burn. They used the trees basically to unlock the nutrients. And then when they played out, they moved to the next area of the forest. Well, coffee is going to go bye-bye. Cocoa is going to go bye-bye without the heavy feeding. Wheat's going to have its own issues, and wheat's going to double in price. So I'm talking to you on my iPad. Dave, I promise when we do our next interview, maybe we should do a two for this month, maybe a little later in the month. We should do one where we'll just do a Skype call where I can have access to my charts. I want to show you people the wheat is screaming at us from a chart standpoint that's probably going to double in price. It has precedence, done this before where the Arab Spring hit. And you're talking, minimum of 14% increase in anything that touches wheat, up to 50% higher in anything that touches wheat. I'm talking about end products. So any breads, any cakes, any pies, any packaged goods, all that stuff, restaurant stuff, is all going to go up in price next year between 14 and 50%. Okay. And there's no way around it at this point. And then corn needs heavy feeding as well. And that's where the potash comes in. See, Russia and the Ukraine and Russia and Ukraine and Kazakhstan, those guys are natural oligarchs over there. If you notice what they're doing with natural gas with Russia, Russia is a cat playing with the ball of yarn called Europe right now. And they're going to starve them into political realities in terms of Russia's foreign policy. Well, Russia's not the only player in that area that has monopoly power over certain things. You got Kazakhstan, which has monopoly power over uranium and monopoly power over potash. Now, thank God for the United States, Canada's just to our north, uranium producer, potash producer. Prices are going up. Okay, so that means corn's going to be very expensive to produce next year. Look, if you're a marginal farmer, you're not going to produce corn next year. You're just not going to be able to put it in the ground. And because it's going to be too expensive, you're going to substitute out. You can't even substitute in the soybeans because they're a heavy feeder too. You're going to have to substitute into lower quality products. And so that's going to affect pork prices. You guys see where I'm going with this? So, and it's going to affect chicken prices, and it's going to affect egg prices. So you're not going to be able to get away or around this. The Biden administration, if they wanted to, they couldn't produce a better ad for the Republican Party than what they're doing with their policies today. Virginia is just a look-see as to the disaster that's going to befall the Democratic Party if they don't right this ship like ASAP. And they have no intention of doing so. Dave, in your monologue, you talked about imploding pipeline number 5. Amazing. Amazingly short-sighted. You know, they already pissed off Mama Bear with Virginian schools. Wait till Mama Bear can't afford stuff at the grocery store. And you can't intimidate Mama Bear. You can't throw the FBI at Mama Bear, okay? You're just another chew toy that she's going to go through to get to you. And I think the Biden administration is going to they're going to feel the heat, and they're going to feel it really hard. It's going to probably hit this spring. You know, once we come out of the winter time, you know, the sales that they put on for the turkeys and for the Christmas stuff, when they start reevaluating January into spring, when the farmers start getting when they walk over to their farm ag place and feedlot and say, hey, I need to get my 20 tons of ammonia, and they find out it's $1,000 versus $100, they're going to say, no can do, because the bank's not going to loan them the money, because the bank's going to do the math and say, you can't produce enough crop to make it worth your while. So you're going to see a lot of these guys are going to sub out into the, into the farm, the abatement programs, just take their money from the government, and they're not going to produce next year. And it's going to cause really, really big issues in 2022. So much more so that I'm buying an additional freezer for my house, and I'm going to just stack 5-pound things of wheat and flour and 4-pound things of sugar, and get it frozen so it can last me the year, so it doesn't go rancid. You know, and if you can't have that, you better learn how to throw CO2 into a bucket and basically blow out the oxygen that way and the bugs, because it's going to be a big problem. And energy, look, oil is going to go to 120 a barrel, and it's going to blow the lid off of everything else. So I'll take a break from my monologue and let you retort, and then we can go on to some of the other areas that are going to be affected, because this is going to be a worldwide problem. This is going to make the Arab Spring look like a picnic.
It is. In the deep early freeze, you know, here in East Tennessee, they were saying it was going to get down to 40, 41 degrees. So I didn't cover my plants out there. Wasn't expected incredible hard freeze. They were off by 9 degrees, and it got right at freezing, and we lost most of our garden out here. I mean, these kind of being off on what's expected in the unique cold that's coming, along with this next vortice coming down here. I really hope last year was a wake-up call to get your heating in order. So even if your heater goes out, if you have a generator that you can run, you know, oil heaters to keep your rooms warm. How are you going to cook food? You got a Coleman stoves. Did you get any, 20-pound cylinders? And this is another thing, those 20-pound cylinders that you would get to put into your, gas grill used to be $45, $50. I don't know. It depends on where you were. Sometimes you get them on sale for $39.99. Minimum price I'm seeing out here is $65 to $70 and a limit of 2. And in some places it's a limit of 1. And, if you have a farm license, you're very lucky, because down where they're doing, larger fills from 40 pounds up, that's a minimum they'll touch if you have 40, 50-pound cylinder, 100-pound, whatever. If you don't have a farm, they're putting farms priority-wise first. Same with the farm co-ops, because I know the guys there have been going for a year. I always chat with them down there. The same thing when we come into next year, fertilizer for the average, mom that might say, hey, can I get a 50-pound bag? I just once a year I buy it. If you don't have a registered farm, registered farms are getting priority now here in Tennessee for goods that they're buying. And I just look around and say, what will happen when Mama Bear gets incredibly angry? Because that's the thing that's the scariest when you're thinking about these types of situations where, if the economy were to implode, yes, there's an enormous amount of opportunities in that. But at the same time, a lot of people aren't prepared. And the most dangerous, at least for me, is a mother with 2 kids walking onto your front porch, like, my kids are starving, we need help. Then what do you do? I mean, that's way less of a frightening scenario than, a car full of people rolling up, guys, you know what you can do with that. But, there's some choices, and there's some things that are repeating in history, let's say. And you can almost follow the trajectory of what has happened in the Maunder minimum, the Sporter minimum, the Oort minimum, and then continue back into some of these unnamed grand solar minimums that have reshaped society. Because it does come to a point where, if you're choosing, like the Bank of England apologizing to the British citizens in advance for putting their lifestyle in, a corner of either choosing to eat for some or heating their homes for some, and there won't be enough money for both, and they're apologizing in public. My jaw's dropping on the floor of the Bank of England coming out to say that. If it comes to this point in the United States, and when you put people in a corner like that, this is where you get, you mentioned Arab Spring, and we're going to get something similar to it on a wider scale. It's almost unfathomable that here in the United States, one of the largest food producers on the planet, that we're going into this situation in the first place, where we might not even have enough to feed our own country because fields are going to sit idle. I would be super happy if farmers would switch crops and go to hemp, or go to sorghum, or amaranth, or millet, or some of these other more ancient grains, spelt, to bring in a crop for some food versus no food. But I know there's not a spot market for that. And, the milling and refining for types of different seed sizes that aren't there. We have to retool a lot of things real fast. So maybe a refining facility will pop up somewhere for just a regional area, or even just a side of a little bit in the state, or for a few counties. I mean, there's enormous opportunities moving forward for food production here. But where we sit right now, if we're going to continue as we do, the plant and harvest dates are already out of kilter. So that's already, throwing something into the works there. But this non-planting or switching of crops is a whole nother animal to deal with, in terms of getting it from the field into the bag. And seed storage, the last thing I'll mention here, we had some real good luck with those just square plastic storage bins, putting sugar in there. At least nothing got into it. The flour, we're trying to use it up as well. But for the seed storage, those 55-gallon DOT approved snap lids that they have a snap and then a latch on top, those are really good, we found, because it had the rubber O-ring in there. Throw a bunch of cayenne pepper in and mix with it. So far, the seed, nothing has gotten into it, but I didn't refrigerate it. So it went through a few heating and cooling cycles. We kept it on the really cool side of the house in the back under tarps, so it didn't get that much direct light. It wasn't all that hot or that cold with direct sunlight. So I'm wondering what the viability for planting that and getting a sprout, what the rate of sproutage would be. Generally, it's around 90, 95, depending on what you see on the label. But being outside in the heat, not stored, I would say correct. It was the best we could do. But seed's large. You got how many tons of seed? You can't put that in your room. It needs to be stored outside. So the viability of the seed decreasing year upon year of holding it, and not the most perfect optimal conditions, which most people don't have. Look at the opportunity, but look at the danger. I mean, they're both on this teeter-totter right now. So I don't know, when prices get high and people get angry, this is what governments have feared through history. And we are no different right now. Just because we're at the apex, so you got a computer. I mean, how many societies were at the apex of what they were when they fell as well? So I think we're just doing a roundabout here, and about, we're at another chapter of remember us and our societies in the history books in 400 years as they flicked through. Oh, those barbarians, they only had electric lights, huh? I think that's where we're going.
From my perspective, I look at the world through the lens of the stock market, and then I look at the data that drives those activities. And we have really two things happening to us, right? So we have the grand solar minimum, which is causing some havoc, not as much as as I thought, but it's still significant. But it's the government fiat regime that's collapsing at the same time. And so that's causing these supply chain issues. Look, the pandemic was either invented or a happy coincidence for these people to be able to then try to become activists to herald in a new monetary regime. So there's and reason why everybody's printing as fast as they can is everybody's printing because they know at some point they can print no more. And that leaves us into what's happening with in the stock market. What we're seeing is the shift now from the financial assets to what I call the monetary assets. And within the monetary assets, I consider energy as a monetary asset. It's the only market big enough to absorb the liquidity that comes in from a lot of wealth. You know, the gold markets and the silver markets aren't big enough. And Bitcoin is still in its infancy, if you will. And so those markets will get overwhelmed in a good way for us who own them. But most of the wealth is going to be absorbed into the oil and energy markets. And particularly you're looking at, you know, natural gas, coal, and uranium are going to do extremely well because uranium's secular. Now, you know, the United Kingdom has just made a decision to basically become a nuclear dominant nation. And they want to become the hydrogen power, meaning they want to be the cutter, they said, or the gutter of hydrogen, which means that when you overproduce nuclear energy for the electricity, you can't use it all the time. And so they want to keep those systems operating at a consistent function. So they're going to go ahead and they're going to produce and they're going to crack hydrogen and oxygen from that. And then want to take that hydrogen and you're going to use that. You're going to see that in transportation. You're going to see it in heating because you can take hydrogen and turn it into methane. You know, you can turn hydrogen, you can turn it into natural gas. Those are just chemistry functions. And so if you have cheap, consistent, long-term pricing for energy, you can then solve a lot of problems. It'll probably take United Kingdom 15 years to get there. You know, a little belated on them. They're listening to the Green New Deal fanatics and it almost put the country down. They still may not survive it, but you know, they have a lot to do to catch up with what France is doing. France is the prototype. As much as I despise a lot of things the French do, they have that down correctly. And they're going to add to it. The French are going to go over 100% production because they know the Germans are reluctant. And this way they can overcharge the Germans for energy. So the Germans are now caught once again in a vice between Russia and France. Now, the last two times it didn't work out so well for the world. So I don't know if they want to wake up German nationalism with this stuff, but they just might. And so you have this situation now with nuclear energy, which uranium is going to go through the roof. And China's going to produce 150 nuclear power plants. Rolls-Royce just announced a major investment to produce what I call city-level nuke plants. Okay, you know, the United States, they wanted to, they could just we already have the world-leading technology of miniaturized nuke plants. They're called aircraft carriers. Okay, so you know we know how to do it safely, and I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing that come out. Well, buy uranium, guys. I've been probably harping on that with you for a year. I just closed one of my trades 350% in a year. I'm waiting for a little bit of a pullback. I'm going to jump back in it again. It's going to go up another 350%. If you guys join us, you can get in on that action. Same with natural gas. Now, natural gas pricing is hard for people retail to trade it right. They call it the widowmaker because it's so volatile. But there are miners, what I would call extractors of natural gas. You can own a few of those, and you'll do quite well. And believe it or not, coal is back from the dead. Now, coal just went through a big up move. It just finished the consolidation, and it's ready for another up move again. Look, China has no choice. Okay, United States has no choice. Europe has no choice. They got to use coal to either bridge them to nuclear or bridge them back to natural gas or bridge them to their renewables, because this winter is going to be brutally cold. And you just talked about that weather. You saw the thing coming in for next week. That's just a harbinger of just one storm after the other. I forget what Joe Bastardi said was the analog year, but it's a brutal winter year on his analog. Now you just add a little bit of extra juice in that because of the grand solar minimum. And I wouldn't be surprised that you're going to see a tripling or quadrupling of natural gas prices. Okay. And it's all offset. Look, the policymakers can't even discuss this stuff with people. All right. Because I think people's jaws will drop. And then you have, obviously, oil is going to go to 120 a barrel. And now it's starting its up move right now. Oil should not be going up right now, Dave. This is the shoulder season. It should be rolling off into Christmas to pick back up in the spring. It's not rolling off. It's maintaining, because the policymakers are restricting the ability for people to produce more energy. And Russia and Saudi Arabia are now back being the marginal producers, and they can play games all day long. So energy is huge. And what goes along with that, if you guys have noticed already, you know, Dave's a big crypto bug. Bitcoin has just blown out to a new high. We think, my partner who does all the crypto trading, he just made a call this morning. He goes, 95,000 is the number. And he goes, I would not be shocked if it happened within the next 4 to 6 weeks. Q4 is usually bullish for Bitcoin. And you know me too, on Bitcoin, I'm extremely conservative. I hate people throwing around these crazy numbers, but we now have institutional ownership of this. We now have maximum visibility, and we now have financial conditions in China that may reverb. On top of it all, the property markets in China are collapsing. So we have a perfect storm now for people to bail out of the banking system and run right into Bitcoin and a few others. I mean, I'm a big Solana fan. Okay. I dabble in Shibu, but that's totally speculative. It can go to zero or go to the moon. But I love Solana and I love Bitcoin. And I think we're going to see some massive moves. And then going along with that, and I'll stop again, Dave, is that, look, we're big fans of Mara and Riot and ANY and HUT and BTBT. You know, all we have algorithms that can buy and sell signals. Pick your poison. We just got off the Mara bus last week, and you know, and expecting a bit of a pullback from the all-time highs on Bitcoin, and it blew right through. It pulled back today, and then we actually entered into Riot, because Riot fell on its face because of they went and diluted their shares. Riot and Mara usually work together, so we're expecting Riot to do a big catch up to Mara. But if Bitcoin goes to 95,000, you know, Mara is now at 75. Mara's going over $100. We're starting to see now actually people making trades at $115 on the option contracts. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mara $120 if Bitcoin gets to 95,000. So even if you don't have a crypto account, you can own Bitcoin kind of as a derivative by owning a company that owns Bitcoin, like Mara, M-A-R-A. So that's what we're doing it, Dave. And if I can do a quick plug for Trade Genius,
please do.
Come trade with us. We trade the cryptos, we trade the stock market. We have some really effective algorithms. We'll teach you how to use them. We'll throw you trades. You know, we have good chat rooms, and you know, we'll help you become an effective trader, and we'll get you in the right markets. And you just go to tradelikeagenius.com and use promo code veterans for non-bundled items, and bundle item 40% off, and bundle items are 65% off, and they're already pre-discounted. You got to take advantage of it by the 13th of November, but I think you'll be really happy with what we offer, and I think you'll do quite well over time, you know, because as you know, Dave and I are talking, we're having macro conversations that then feed our interest in certain sectors of the market. But when things get real, people are not going to care what the price of Tesla is, because you're not going to be able to afford a Tesla. You're going to be really interested in what the price of wheat is, or the price of Bitcoin, or the price of gold, because that's the only way in which you're going to be able to leverage your wealth to be able to afford things into the future.